Haida la isis, Haida nai.
Why neat, Tlabala skundakwan.
Suhakake wa'a. Gunilchish hat yigudi. Southeast Alaska is comprised of 1,100 islands spread over more than 35,000 square miles. This area has been the homeland of the Tlingit people for at least 10,000 years. It's also the home to the Haida and Tsimshian, who arrived in the 18th and 19th centuries. The first people here thrived in the area, which was rich in natural resources and supported the development of a complex society. Native people established extensive trading networks beyond their homeland and economic systems that led to an abundance of commerce and a socially intricate culture. Their region stretched along a narrow strip of the coastal mainland and included adjacent islands from the Portland Canal in British Columbia to 600 miles northward beyond Yakutat in the northern region to the Copper River Delta. Through trading and fishing, they were able to fulfill their needs and create a material culture that is unique in the world. They developed methods to create the great clan houses that once dominated the shores of Southeast Alaska. They created massive totem poles that told of their history and identity. They were the people of the tides who developed tools to harvest marine resources in a way that protected stocks for future generations. The area north of what is known today as Juneau is the traditional homeland of the Ak Kwan. The area to the south was owned by the Taku Kwan, whose ancestral homeland surrounded the Taku River in the southern areas of Douglas, and which today is part of the greater city and borough of Juneau. In 2015, the native nonprofit Sealaska Heritage Institute opened its cultural center, known as the Walter Soboleff Building, just steps from the Gastineau Channel. The building, though a challenge to realize, has helped transform perceptions about Native people. It has become a hub for visitors and locals to learn about and support the ancient Native cultures of Southeast Alaska. And it's part of a larger vision to make Juneau the Northwest Coast arts capital of the world. Gunilchish ha'in chisatiye.
Doix nu some dana the sail some gua.
Hawa Atlan u ijung.
This video tells of the challenging journey of a Native nonprofit in Alaska to build its cultural center, the Walter Soboleff Building. This video was made possible by Art Place America, which was also a major donor for construction of the building. This story begins with a disaster.
I recall driving downtown, and it was a beautiful day, blue skies, and as you got closer to downtown, you noticed this big black haze from the Skinner building being on fire.
In 2004, a fire destroyed Juneau's historic Skinner building, creating the city's biggest eyesore, an area which became known locally as the Pit.
It was just the biggest eyesore walking near that. And then the sidewalks started to cave in into the pits because the soils underneath the sidewalks started to wash into the pit. So it literally became like a sink where everything was being sucked into this pit.
Yodeklatsak kakahani yuchatuasak, jak na ayachat.
Around the same time, the president of Sealaska Heritage Institute was dreaming of a building for the nonprofit, which serves the Tlingit, Haida, and Tsimshian people of Southeast Alaska, offering programming in Native art, culture, education, and research. Its mission is to perpetuate and enhance Tlingit, Haida, and Tsimshian cultures.
We knew that we were overcrowded, Plus, we were starting to have lots of different activities, and it was always hard for us to find places to rent or where we could have, have our activities. So I said, let's build a building, and we started.
In 2010, Sealaska, the native corporation for the region and founder of Sealaska Heritage Institute, purchased the land and donated it to SHI under the leadership of its board of directors and its chair, Al Kukesh. Sealaska also helped beautify the unsightly lot.
We didn't want it to be our pit for 3 years. So we filled it in and worked with Sealaska to landscape it, put some pavers in, some like little flower bed areas for the landscaping where people could also sit and really turn it into a nice space. So that's how it became known as the Sealaska Park.
The dream was to create a building based on the ancient architecture of the first peoples of the region, the great Northwest Coast clan houses that once dominated the shores of Southeast Alaska.
So I wanted it, to absolutely represent our traditional architecture, our traditional culture. But I also wanted it to show who we are as a people and how we've come through, very difficult historical period, but that we were also very modern and that our culture was thriving in the 21st century. And so I wanted a building that reflected all of it.
The Institute hired MRV architects and drew up schematics for the building, which would include monumental art throughout, a clan house, a public exhibit space, a store, a living history room, and a climate-controlled vault for SHI's collections and archives. Then, heartache.
Dr. Walter Alexander Soboleff passed away at age 102.
In 2011, SHI's longtime chair, the great Tlingit spiritual leader, Dr. Walter Soboleff, passed away, just weeks after approving of the building's design.
He loved it. He said, I really like this, and this is the design we're going to go with. And I want to say it was probably like 15 to 18 days later or so, Walter passed.
It was at the memorial that SHI announced the building would be named for him.
The Dr. Walter Soboleff Center.
When I think about the role of Dr. Soboleff and his contributions to Tlingit society and to Alaska, was that he became kind of like the mediator. He was like the person that went between Native society and the white society. So it was appropriate, that it be named after him.
In 2011, fundraising began for the building, which would cost $20 million during a time the nation was coming out of a deep recession.
Just after the Lehman Brothers collapsed, the world is falling to shambles. And it was just panic going on in the world. And so fundraising was almost a 4-letter word. Fundraising was very difficult because people didn't have money to give.
I've always said that ignorance is bliss, because I had no idea what it took to build a building. And it's probably a good thing I didn't know anything about it, because I had absolutely no idea, what raising $20 million meant. So I guess that was my reaction, is that I just said, let's do it, and that's been my motto. Let's just do it.
Over 3 years, lawmakers Bill Thomas and Albert Kukesh helped secure a state appropriation for construction. Art Place America and other donors generously contributed to the project.
This is done by our great, wonderful friend David Boxley.
SHI held an auction, and artists astounded staff by donating magnificent pieces for the event, which raised nearly $300,000. But one of the most moving donations came from a homeless man who approached SHI President Rosita Whirl and handed her $1.
To me, I mean, that really said something, you know, that here we had somebody that I know probably could have used that dollar more than us, but he wanted to be part of this building.
It meant a lot, and I think what it showed me is not only will people give you their last dollar when they believe in what you're doing, but they'll give you the shirt off their back, they'll help you, they'll do whatever they need to because they believe in the vision that we've communicated, they believe in what we have laid out there. They see the future. And to me, Rosita and all of SHI staff that, you know, partaked in developing the vision of the Walter Soboleff Building and projecting that outwards, provided him hope, provided him a vision of what his future could look like. And so much so that he gave his only dollar at the time to support that cause. To me, that's powerful.
In 2013, staff got a wake-up call. The building site was on the edge of the city's historic district, which depicted a Victorian-era motif reminiscent of the town's mining heyday. When SHI submitted a red and turquoise sign to the city for approval, permission for a permit was denied because the traditional colors of the area's first peoples, who have inhabited the region for 10,000 years, were not considered historic.
Horror, absolute horror. I could not believe it. And then to suggest that our art and even the type, you know, they said the font was wrong. And I was furious. And I told staff, go out and look for that sign, no natives allowed. Those signs that used to be on businesses up and down the street here in Juneau. And I said, I want you to find me that same font as no natives allowed, and that's the font that we're going to use. And then to suggest that we, as the first peoples, you know, weren't historic was just, so astounding, you know, that kind of, I really hate to say it, you know, is that racism, that acceptance that the first peoples, that this wasn't their homeland and this wasn't their historical place.
To me, it set the playing field, that this is what we're up against. By that shot across our bow, we battened down the hatches and we tightened everything up and we knew the fight we were in for, because if you're willing to fight over a 3-foot by 4-foot sign and pick apart colors and text and design on that, we knew what was to come and we were planning for it.
The biggest challenge was yet to come. When staff sought permits for the building, the design was rejected by a historical commission known as the HRAC, which said the facade facing Front Street had to conform to the Victorian style. Later, the City Planning Commission agreed.
And I was seething mad, just sitting there, staring straight ahead, could not believe that they too followed suit of the HRAC committee.
We believe that the design of the center complements the historic district.
The matter then went to the City Assembly, which had a proposal before it to take the site out of the historic district and allow the design to move forward.
When we as Alaska Natives saw the design of the building, we were really pleased and felt good in our hearts for the design, because it correctly portrayed the Native people that have lived in this community for many generations, thousands of years.
And the idea of this native communal building being whitewashed, for lack of a better term right now, but to have a Victorian face put on it it's got the potential to peel some scabs that we don't want to peel in this community.
Meeting the historic Victorian-style architecture on one side of the building, coupled with the native-inspired architectural design on the remaining sides of the facility, would adversely affect and seriously undermine the architectural aesthetics, conflict with native art, design, and cultural values that require social and spiritual balance, and furthermore, would be unsightly.
In the end, the city rezoned the site out of the historic district, which resolved the issue, but it was a bitter pill to swallow.
They moved us out of the historic district so that we wouldn't have to comply with the requirements of, looking like a miner's building. And in my mind, this is something we still have to address, that we cannot say that we're still, we don't comply to the historic district, and that's why the Assembly had to move us out of the historic district in order for us to be able to build this building. That's still a stain that we need to deal with.
Hey ho, hey ho, iya achjeke, Tlingit.
And then the day came when Sealaska Heritage broke ground. Tlingit leader Byron Malott called the moment a realization of Alaska's Native Land Claims Settlement Act, known as ANCSA.
Of this vision, this building, and what it will do, not just for Alaska Natives, but for all of Alaskans, is to me what ANCSA was all about. It really is. This is what ANCSA is all about. To create another giant step in Alaska's Native peoples, contributing their strength and their essence and their beauty and their values and their traditions and their heritage to all Alaska.
Flag, death, none. Oh, one more time.
It was awesome. It was just, I couldn't believe it. The day had come and we were ready for construction. So it was a very exciting day, and a lot of our people were here celebrating, this event.
And then came the flood.
Got this frantic call from Lee about, it was one of those days where we had a really high tide, and there was water gushing out like a waterfall from the side, and it was horrifying. It was frightening to see. I said, this is where we're going to build our building. So it was a catastrophe, but yet on the other hand, we called in the architects and we're working with them, and I said, I absolutely want to make sure that our archives and our collections are going to be safe. And so they have built, a fail-safe, a facility for us.
There's actually 5 different layers of waterproofing in the Walter Soboleff Building to provide protection, so that if any one of them fails, there's 4 more behind it. So still to this day, we've never had issues with tide or tidal influence, and I don't expect that we ever will.
The rest of the construction phase went off without a hitch. And then the day finally came.
I want to thank Sealaska for
inviting us to be part of this joyous occasion. It's something we have needed for a very long time.
In May 2015, Sealaska Heritage held an opening ceremony for the Walter Soboleff Building. People came from across the region and state to witness the historical event, which lasted an entire day.
This will serve to me as a symbol of healing that needs to take place among us as Native people, as people of Alaska, where there will be joy, peace, and harmony in working together for the betterment, not only for our community, but for our land that our people loved so dearly.
It is our wish that the Sealaska would turn our culture into the waves. Jalhajidach anatakche. Jalhajidach anatakche. Before our culture sinks. And this is what we see behind us here. This building, Walter Soboleff Building. This will be a bridge for all our grandchildren, forever and ever, to learn their culture, to learn their language, to learn their values of our ancestors.
The building turned out to be more than a building. It is itself a work of art. It includes monumental art made by some of the most important Native artists of our time, including the piece on the facade, inspired by a painting by Haida artist Robert Davidson, titled The Greatest Echo.
Dr. Walter Soboleff, in the many celebrations we've come to, there was always a message of hope, and his message was always positive. It wasn't condescending, or it wasn't we should be doing this or we should be doing that. It was echoing values of our ancestors.
It was perfect. It was everything that we wanted to show the traditional, ancient culture, but yet, you know, that we live in a very modern world as Native people.
Inside the lobby, a huge house front made by Tsimshian artist David A. Boxley and his son takes center stage.
We knew we wanted to portray the four clans. The Tsimshian are different from the Haida and the Tlingit in that we have four major crests, four major clans that everyone belongs to, not just two. And we wanted them to be well recognizable and right out there for people to see.
A clan house inside the building features a glass house screen and two posts made by Tlingit glass artist Preston Singletary. During the project, Preston mentored 6 apprentices who helped map out the design through a grant from Art Place America. The project was significant because it allowed the artists to learn new skills in the old way through a traditional mentor apprenticeship.
So from the highest point on here,
it's integral to our entire history of our art. You know, that's how we culturally passed our knowledge down. So it's a very, very important relationship.
Well, no, we'll do it later after you get.
The Art Place America Award allowed emerging artists to help create a space for gatherings that speaks to the Native worldview and the evolution of Northwest Coast art.
Every time, you know, I come in here and I see this spectacular piece and I say, oh my God, you know, made of glass, you know, again, symbolic of our movement, you know, into the 21st century, that we could take a modern media like glass and make it into something, again, that's our own.
The clan house and other areas of the building feature cedar that was hand-adzed by Tlingit artist Wayne Price. Adzing produces a texture that's commonly seen in Northwest Coast art, canoes, clan houses, and ceremonial objects. But it represents more than a texture. Adzing is at the very heart of Native culture.
So it goes back to the beginning, was our ability to look at a tree, be able to cut it down, be able to split the timber out, be able to adze it just as flat as this timber is here, and all of it was done with an elbow adze. So there was no other tool. You know, that was the chainsaw, that was the sawmill.
Worrell says if she had to single out her favorite thing about the building, that would be it.
It's the simplicity of the adze marks. Maybe it's the fact that it represents probably one of our earliest forms of art, and it is art, because there's really no functional need for adzing, but it says who we are.
The building also includes a climate control space for archives and collections.
We needed a temperature-controlled, humidity-controlled space for the collections, because if we didn't have that, we wouldn't be able to hold those valuable collections.
On the main level, the Institute has an exhibits hall where Native people tell the Native story.
I wanted to make sure that we could portray our culture from our own perspective, not from an outsider's perspective. Plus, I also knew that there were aspects of our culture that our younger ones, weren't familiar with. So I thought it could also be a good educational tool for the youth.
The main level also includes a store which supports Native artists and ensures pieces are made by Native people. Once the building opened, something unexpected happened. Sealaska Heritage saw an explosion of growth. The Institute staff, which numbered 12 prior to the project, grew to 65 people, and the programs grew exponentially.
And I never foresaw that. I didn't realize that that would come, and if I did think that there's growth, I thought it would be in 20 years and down the road, but did I think it was in 5 years? Oh, never. No, I didn't think it would be that quick.
I knew that we were going to expand, but not to the degree that we did.
The Walter Soboleff Building is part of a larger vision to make Juneau the Northwest Coast arts capital of the world. After the building opened, people outside of SHI began to embrace that vision too. The city named the intersection by the building Heritage Square and commissioned wayfinding signs with Native designs that pointed to the area.
Juneau as the Northwest Coast Arts Capital of the world is a vision. That's a powerful vision that Rosita set forward, and everything started to fill into it. And now the city sees it. People are talking about it. People are saying it.
In Phase 2 of the vision, SHI is building its Sealaska Heritage Arts Campus across the street. And it says a lot that the city, during the COVID fiscal crisis in 2020, unanimously voted to appropriate $1.5 million toward construction of the facility. In a matter of several years, things in Juneau began to change. Change for the better.
To me, we've changed so many lives that I don't think as a team we really reflect back on enough. And that to me is what's so powerful, is it's endless. It really is. I know deep down in my heart that it's made so much change for the good and will continue to do so for many, many years to come.
Rosita Worrell once wrote, "We not only built a building, we built a premier Native cultural and educational institute."
Every once in a while when I'm driving down the street and I look at it, you know, that's when I recognize that we did something, you know. We did something. We put our print in a place where people had been trying to get rid of us. Shuka hit, our ancestors' house. I mean, I'm almost ready to cry right now, just thinking that we built a place, you know, for our people, a place here in Juneau where our people can be proud of this building, of having a place where they can call their own.